There's a moment every man reaches, not out of anger, not out of pride, but from something quieter, deeper. It's when you stop reaching, you stop explaining, you stop trying to be heard by someone who was no longer listening, and suddenly, everything changes. Not in her world at first. She still posts. She still smiles. She still pretends. But beneath that carefully kept image, something begins to shift. Something she didn't expect. Because she thought your silence would make her feel free. Instead, it starts to echo. Not in the way noise does, but in the way absence does. Quietly, relentlessly, in the places where your presence once lived. This is where most men interrupt the process. They break the silence too soon. They try to speak when their stillness was saying more. But if you hold the line, if you stay grounded in your peace, what unfolds on the other side of that silence might just change everything. Because a man who can walk away without bitterness isn't weak. He's rare. And the moment you stop offering access to a space that no longer valued it, that's when she starts to feel what she wouldn't let herself feel before. Let's talk about what really happens when you stop contacting her. If you're ready to see what unfolds in the quiet, like the video, so more men find the strength in silence. Subscribe to Stoic Station for weekly reflections that restore your power, your clarity, and your place in the world. Because silence, when it's rooted in self-respect, becomes the loudest truth she'll ever hear. Let's get into it. One she doesn't forget, she rewinds. When you finally stop reaching out, no calls, no texts, no last-minute explanations, most people around you assume she's already moved on. She looks composed. She posts photos with friends, laughs in stories, maybe even flirts a little online. To the outside world, she appears untouched, maybe even relieved. But that's the surface. The real story is unfolding in the silence of her own mind. Because her silence isn't forgetting, it's resistance. She's not over you. She's trying not to feel you. She resists the pull to open your last message. She tells herself not to go back and hear your voice through that old voice note again. She fights the quiet loop that keeps spinning in her head, the last conversation, the last look, the final tone of your voice. What haunts her isn't just what you said. It's how you said it, your energy, the way you didn't raise your voice, the way you didn't plead, the way you just stopped. She remembers the exact rhythm of your tone, calm, firm, unshaken. She remembers the restraint, the way you didn't need to explain yourself one more time. And that memory, it doesn't fade, it sharpens, it deepens. Because that last version of you, the one who didn't chase, the one who stood grounded in quiet self-respect, that's now the version she can't stop replaying. In her mind, it's frozen like the final frame of a movie she wasn't ready to stop watching. And now, it keeps playing on repeat. If you left begging, she replays it with detachment. If you left angry, she replays it with resistance. But if you left with presence, with poise, with clarity, she replays that moment like a film scene where the man walks away with dignity, and she was too late to stop him. That's when the internal conflict begins. Not because she's suddenly lost in regret, but because your silence forced her to meet something she was never ready to face, your emotional strength. And not just that, she starts to question the role she played in all of it. Because a man who used to pour himself into her world, who used to offer reassurance, softness and consistency, has now become unavailable, not because he's bitter, but because he's done. And done, when it comes with peace, is powerful. So no, she doesn't miss you because she's lonely. She misses you because the way you disappeared wasn't weak, it was precise. You didn't slam the door. You didn't make noise. You simply left the space with grace and silence. And that silence, it speaks volumes. Because now she's left trying to define what happened. She's left trying to decode that last moment because she never expected you to walk away without trying to explain yourself one more time. She didn't think you had it in you, but you did. And now that image of you, the one who didn't fight, didn't flinch, didn't beg, becomes harder to forget. Because that kind of man is rare, and that kind of energy lingers. She doesn't tell anyone. She won't post about it. But she's thinking about it, about you, in the quiet spaces between her smiles, at red lights, in the shower, before she falls asleep. Not because you were perfect, but because you ended it in a way that redefined who you are. That's the power of leaving with presence, with poise, with purpose. Because long after the conversation ends, you stay, not through words, but through how you carried yourself in your final goodbye. And that is what she rewinds, again and again. 2. She starts looking for you, in all the wrong places. When you go silent, not out of anger, not to manipulate, but from a place of clarity and dignity, something shifts in her. And that shift is rarely what you expect. She doesn't reach out immediately. She doesn't rush back with regret or vulnerability. Instead, she takes a different route, one that looks like strength on the surface but is often built on avoidance. Her first instinct isn't to feel, it's to distract. Because to sit in the emptiness you left behind would mean facing the part of her that still cares, still wonders, still longs for something unspoken. And so, instead of processing what your presence truly meant, she runs from it. She begins performing, not intentionally, but emotionally. She posts more frequently. She smiles wider. She surrounds herself with people, sometimes even someone new. To the outside world, she looks like she's glowing up, unfazed, unshaken. But underneath that curated image, there's a deeper truth. She's trying to convince herself, and everyone watching, that your absence means absolutely nothing. But deep down it does, because a woman who's truly over you doesn't need to perform. She doesn't need to replace. She doesn't need to project. And yet, here she is, talking to someone else, texting someone new, going on a date that feels more like a scene than a connection. Because when a woman hasn't fully processed the emotional depth of what you gave her, she doesn't connect. She compares. She compares how he texts to how you made her feel with just a few words. She compares the way he shows up to the stillness and steadiness you carried effortlessly. She compares how it feels when he touches her hand to the safety she once felt just resting her head on your chest. But it's not the same. Not even close, and that's what starts to break through the illusion. What looked like her moving on is actually her moving sideways, grasping for a version of comfort that doesn't exist in this new person. Because it wasn't just you she was attached to, it was the way she felt around you, your presence, your patience, your quiet sense of purpose. That's what made her feel held. That's what gave her peace. And here's the part most men never realize. She's not replacing you. She's trying to run from you. More specifically, from the part of herself that still feels tied to what you once gave her. Because you didn't just fill space. You gave meaning to it. You were a steady hand when the world felt too loud. And now that you're gone, that space feels heavier, not because of what you did wrong, but because of how right you were in moments she didn't fully appreciate. So she fills it. She fills it with noise, with presence, with bodies, with attention. But the void doesn't shrink, it echoes, because nothing she pours into it feels the same. She might not tell her friends this. She might not even admit it to herself. But at night, when the conversations feel forced, when the laughter doesn't land the same, when she stares at a message from someone else and doesn't feel moved, That's when she realizes this isn't healing, it's hiding. And hiding doesn't work forever, because no matter how far she runs or who she runs to, there's still one thing she can't outrun: the memory of being truly seen by a man who didn't just want her, but made her feel safe in her own skin. You didn't need to prove anything. You didn't chase when you left. You just stood in your truth and walked away with peace. And that's the version of you she starts looking for again, in all the wrong places. 3. She watches in silence. She may act indifferent. She may carry herself like nothing has changed, like you've simply faded out of her story, and she's moved on without a second thought. But make no mistake, she's still watching, quietly, consistently, carefully. This is the part most men overlook. They assume silence means absence. They assume her not reaching out, not commenting, not reacting means she's done. But in reality, her silence isn't distance, it's observation. She watches your stories, but never taps. She checks your profile, but never likes. She scrolls past your photos slowly, not to engage, but to inspect. She asks mutual friends how you're doing, casually slipping your name into conversation as if it doesn't really matter. But it does. Every time she hears about you, she listens a little longer than she admits. She lingers in those moments because now you've become something you haven't been in a long time. A mystery. You used to be transparent, texting, explaining, showing up, proving your feelings. You used to be predictable, easy to reach, easy to read. But ever since you went silent, ever since you chose not to react, not to chase, not to play your part in the old pattern, everything changed. You didn't disappear with a grand exit. You didn't post angry rants. You didn't leave clues behind. You simply withdrew with calm, with focus, with purpose. No explanations, no emotional breadcrumbs. You just went quiet. And that, to a woman who once had your full emotional availability, is deeply unsettling. Because now she can't read you. She can't feel your energy like she used to. You're no longer emotionally accessible at her convenience. And that unavailability sparks something in her that no amount of attention from someone new can silence. She starts to wonder, not just about what you're doing, but who you're becoming. Are you better without her? Happier? Stronger? Is someone else getting the version of you she once had? Or worse, the version of you she never gave herself the chance to fully appreciate? That curiosity builds tension, and tension leads to testing. So she posts something cryptic, not because she needs to, but because she wants to see if you'll take the bait. She reacts to an old photo, maybe one tied to a memory only the two of you would understand. She sends a harmless message, saw this and thought of you, disguised as casual but loaded with intent. What she's doing isn't random, it's calculated. She's not asking to come back yet. She's asking a subtler question: do I still have emotional power over you? Because if she can make you react, if she can get you to show that you still feel something, that you still care, that you're still emotionally tethered to her in some way, then part of her feels safe again. Even if she's not ready to love you again, she's comforted by the thought that she could. Your reaction isn't just a reply, it's a signal that she still matters, a signal that she hasn't been forgotten, that even in your strength, in your silence, you're still orbiting around her gravity. And that's what she's hoping for, that she still has a piece of you, even if she's no longer by your side. But when you don't respond, when you don't flinch, when you don't take the bait, something in her starts to shift. Not in anger, not in ego, but in awareness. For the first time, she begins to question whether her emotional influence still reaches you at all. And when that uncertainty takes root, it starts to unravel the illusion of control she thought she had. Because what shakes her isn't your words, it's the absence of them, not your affection, but the calm indifference that replaced it. Not your attention, but the quiet strength that now defines you. That's when she realizes you're not just gone. You're no longer reachable in the ways that once made her feel powerful. And that silence, that mystery, it becomes louder than anything you could have ever said. Fourth, her tests are hidden confessions. She won't say the words directly. She won't tell you she misses you or that she's been thinking about you. Instead, she'll send signals disguised as nothing, a quick reply to your story, a subtle reaction to something you posted months ago, a message at midnight that simply says, "Remember this," with a photo that hits deeper than she'll ever admit. And here's the truth. She's not playing games. She's not testing you to mess with your head. She's testing to see if the man who once made her feel seen still sees her. Because that's what she truly misses. Not just you, but her through your eyes. The version of herself that felt beautiful, valued, wanted, safe. The version of her that mattered to someone who didn't need her, but genuinely appreciated her. That's what she's reaching for when she sends that message. Not just reconnection, but remembrance. What most men fail to recognize is that these tests aren't about ego. They're quiet confessions. She's saying, "I miss being seen by you," without putting herself in a position to be rejected outright. She doesn't want to be the first to say it. She wants to know, can you still feel her presence without her having to shout for it? But here's where the test either builds attraction or ends it. Most men, especially those still healing or waiting, see her message as the green light. They dive in. They break the silence. They confess too much too soon, not from groundedness, but from longing. And in that moment, everything shifts. The weight of mystery disappears. The power dynamic resets. And the woman who reached out seeking strength finds the same version she walked away from. Because what she's really searching for isn't just a reply. She wants a mirror. She wants to see if the man she left behind has evolved, if the man who once depended on her approval has become someone who no longer needs it, but still offers grace, clarity, and strength. When you respond too eagerly, when you fall back into old emotional habits, when you rush to explain, to validate, to reignite what once was, she doesn't feel reconnected. She feels confirmed. Confirmed that nothing has changed, that you're still emotionally predictable, that the space you gave her wasn't for your own growth, it was a waiting room. But when you respond with calm confidence, no chase, no need, no drama, something in her shifts. She begins to realize the man who once clung has now let go. And that version of you, that's the one she didn't see coming. So understand this. Her test isn't about your words, it's about your frame. And your ability to stand in that frame with quiet strength is what turns her test into respect. 5. When she can't read you anymore, she romanticizes you. There's something unsettling to her when she can no longer read you, when the version of you that used to reach out, over-explain, or look for closure simply vanishes into calm. She scrolls through her phone, expecting to feel in control, but now there's nothing to analyze. No new posts, no emotional reactions, no breadcrumbs. And slowly, that stillness starts to echo. But here's where the silence begins to shift the story. Her imagination starts doing the heavy lifting. She doesn't remember the hard moments, not the tension, not the distance, not the miscommunications. Those parts blur. What lingers are the flashes of warmth, the sound of your voice late at night, the way you made her laugh at the most unexpected times, the safety she felt when her world was spinning and you simply held her without saying a word. She doesn't choose to remember the good. Her mind just edits the past that way. Because memory, especially when mixed with silence, is selective. It protects itself from pain and holds on to comfort. It doesn't play fair, it plays softly, and suddenly the man she once doubted or distanced herself from is now painted in the soft light of nostalgia. The longer you remain steady in your absence, the more her memory amplifies the parts of you that made her feel alive. The way you listened when no one else did. The stillness you carried when she felt chaotic. The way your eyes made her feel understood without needing to say much. Now, every man she meets, even if he seems like a good match on paper, can't quite measure up. They may be charming, spontaneous, or successful, but they don't hold her attention the way you did. They don't carry the same energy. They speak more but say less. They try harder but feel less grounded. They don't make her feel emotionally safe. Not the way you did. And what begins as curiosity turns into quiet comparison. Not because she wants to go backward, but because she can't find the emotional rhythm she once had with you. Your calm presence, the emotional space you held without effort. It becomes a standard she never realized she set until now. And that's when the ache begins. Not because you're gone, but because of how you left. You didn't storm out. You didn't try to prove a point. You didn't beg to be remembered. You simply exited with grace, with calm, with a kind of emotional clarity that most men never reach. And now she's left with a version of you she can't access, but can't forget. You're no longer a man she left. You're a man she now measures others against. And that kind of memory doesn't fade. It follows her, not through photos, not through messages, but in quiet moments, when she's alone, when laughter doesn't feel as rich, when presence feels forced. That's when you return, not in person, but in memory. And she romanticizes you, not because she chose to, but because you gave her something real, and then walked away without needing her to validate it. Sixth, let her swim to shore. There will come a moment, quiet, subtle, when she breaks the silence. Not with a dramatic apology or a desperate confession. No, it will be far more delicate than that. A short message, a shared memory. This reminded me of you, with a smiley face that doesn't quite match the weight behind it. On the surface it may seem casual, almost forgettable. But make no mistake, that moment carries weight. She's not just saying hi, she's reaching out with intention, even if she doesn't admit it to herself. Because what she's really doing is testing, not just you, but the version of you she thinks might still be there. She's asking a quiet question. Are you still the man who once jumped at her voice, who dropped his peace just to stay close, who gave too much, too soon? Or have you become the man she didn't expect, the one who no longer chases, no longer explains, no longer needs to be understood to feel whole? Her message isn't a bridge, it's a probe. And here's where many men make the mistake. They mistake her curiosity for commitment. They hear from her and rush to respond. They overexpress. They take her opening as a green light and try to pick up where they left off. But what she was looking for wasn't romance. It was reassurance. Reassurance that she still mattered enough to get a rise out of you. Reassurance that, even after the silence, she could still stir something in you. And if you respond too quickly, too eagerly, if you abandon your stillness the moment she surfaces, she knows the truth. You're still emotionally tethered. You didn't grow. You waited. And her reach, though small, still holds power. But if you've truly evolved, if your silence wasn't just strategy, but transformation, then you won't jump in. You'll receive her message with grace, maybe even with warmth, but not with urgency. You'll respond, if at all, not from a place of emotional need, but from a place of fullness. And that, more than anything, will shift how she sees you. Because now she doesn't just see the man she used to know. She sees the man she never truly understood. A man who can feel the pull and still remain grounded. A man who doesn't need the past to repeat in order to feel complete. A man who respects his space, his growth, and the peace he fought for in the silence. Let her test the waters, let her swim toward you, but don't wade in just because you miss her. Stand at the shore, not out of pride, but out of presence, because if she's truly ready, she'll keep moving closer. And when she does, what will keep her there is not your message, not your effort, not your explanation, but your calm. Respect is the foundation of real feminine desire, and there is nothing more magnetic to a woman than a man who holds his ground, not because he wants to be above her, but because he finally stands firmly within himself. She doesn't need you to chase her. She needs to know you don't need to. That's what turns her quiet hello into a silent awakening, that the man she once lost no longer needs her validation to know his worth. And that realization is what makes her truly see you again. Summary. You're not invisible, you're just finally unavailable to what once devalued you, and that's not weakness, that's growth. At some point, you stop explaining. You stop trying to prove your worth to someone who only saw it when it was leaving. And in that space where you used to reach, fix, or wait, there's now a man who's learned to stand still, not out of resentment, but out of reverence for the man he's becoming. If you've stopped contacting her, stay stopped. Not as a tactic, not to punish, but because peace has replaced the need to be understood. Because silence, when it comes from strength, not bitterness, is the loudest language a man can speak. It says, I remember who I am now. I choose not to negotiate my value anymore. And I will not pour myself into places that only loved the overflow, never the source. She may not respond. She may never admit what your absence did to her. But she hears it. She feels it. And every day she doesn't hear from you, your silence keeps reminding her, this man is no longer within reach, not because he disappeared, but because he finally came home to himself, and that is everything. If this message gave you even a moment of clarity, if it reminded you of your strength, your stillness, or the man you're becoming, then let it ripple, like the video, so more men can find this truth. Subscribe to Stoic Station for weekly reminders that you don't need noise to be powerful, because the man who walks away without war is the one she never forgets.